I made a video a couple days ago where I said that Paul O'Keefe, John's brother, needed to do an interview because we needed to hear what was going on. He seemed to be really perturbed at Karen as he was leaving the courtroom, and it was suspicious the way he was sitting with the McAlberts during that final day. And so I thought, he couldn't really think she did it. We need to hear from him. Well, we did. And wow, it was a humdinger. Let me start with this part first, though.
A good man whose life was taken way too soon.
That is the one part of this entire interview where he was absolutely honest and forthright, and I agree with him. John O'Keefe, by all accounts, was a very good man who was taken too soon, and he deserves justice. But I'm sorry, I think the rest of this video was a world-class hypocrisy tour, and I'm about to go step by step and explain why. This first clip is how he seems a little bit surprised at how Karen's story may have changed a bit over time.
Well, if you remember her first arraignment in Stoughton District Court, her attorney, David Unetti, had said this is a tragic accident. His client had no criminal intent. And then, you know, fast forward to, I guess, when Alan Jackson came on board. And, you know, they teamed up with a blogger to get their story that they concocted and put together and flooded out there. And people were only hearing one side of the story and coming to conclusions before actual evidence in the trial had actually begun.
I know, Paul, it's absolutely appalling how people's stories change. It's that Jen McCabe told the cops on the scene that Karen said something to the effect of, I worry I may have hit him, what if I hit him? But then after a meeting with her whole little family, she called that cop back and said, actually, I think she said, I hit him. And then by the time she got to the grand jury, it was, I hit him. It's amazing how stories change over time. Or like how the first responders every single one of them to a man said that this was a beating, that these injuries to his head were consistent with a fight, that he'd been beaten up, that this had been a domestic event. Not one of them had put in their files that there was any vehicular incident until they all got in front of the jury. And then suddenly it was, well, he might have been hit by a car. Well, I just didn't write it down. I really thought that at the time, but I must have left it out of my report. I know, Paul, I hear you. It sucks when people change their story.
And half of her time was upstairs gathering her things. Then my wife spoke to her on the phone on their way back to Dighton, and she told my wife that just have to remember the bad times, and I don't think I'm ever going to talk to you guys again.
Was that phone call what made you sure of what had happened?
Absolutely, yeah. We already, like I said, we put the pieces together on our own, and that just really solidified it. You know, why would somebody say that? Why would someone say, you know, if you didn't do anything, why would you say you're never going to talk to us again?
I know, Paul, it's really interesting how you say, who would say something like that if they did nothing wrong? Well, it would probably be the same people who would throw away their cell phones. It'd actually be the same person who deleted all of their texts and Google searches and phone calls from almost an entire 24-hour period because they did nothing wrong. Or the guy who did nothing wrong yet went to a fucking military base to throw away his cell phone to prove he did nothing wrong. Yeah, people do strange things when they did nothing wrong, Paul. For some reason, Karen's strange behavior leads you to believe she's guilty. But everybody else's strange behavior seems perfectly normal.
68, I'm sorry, testify. Right. And according to them, they're all lying and they're not credible, and, you know, which, I mean, there's first responders that were just doing their job that day. Jen McCabe, Kerry Roberts, all they did was pick up the phone and help because she was asking for help. And according to them, the only one telling the truth is her.
Yep, 68 witnesses got up on the stand and testified to, frankly, absolutely nothing, because not a single one of them saw the car accident. Not a single one of them saw Karen drive her car into John. In fact, not a single one of them can place John outside of Karen's vehicle. You got 3 people in the Ford F-150 that said she pulled up because they pulled up right behind her, so they knew her SUV was there. But none of the three of them in the vehicle and Julie Nagel walking back and forth across the grass didn't ever see John get out of the car. No one in the house ever saw anything happen. They never saw John get out of the car. So how would there be witnesses? What were they witnessing? 10 different people. 10 different people were out in front of that house after midnight, between midnight and 4 a.m. Not one of them saw John. Not one. 10 different people walked basically in that area or drove in that area where you can see it. There's no fucking trees in that front yard. You would see a body laying on the yard. 10 different people. Witnesses put up on the stand, didn't witness a thing because not one of them saw John on that lawn. It wouldn't matter if it was 68 or 468. None of them witnessed John being hit, and none of them witnessed John's body on the lawn until Karen found him at 6 o'clock in the morning.
And they were disappointed in the outcome, but Adam said, he goes, we're just going to do it again. He goes, I'll start tomorrow. So they're confident. They have the truth on their side. Unfortunately, if you pay high-powered attorneys enough and put enough lies out there, you start influencing people to the point where there's just no turning back. Mm-hmm. I think people just don't want to admit that they were wrong or duped. But they're confident, and we're going to go at it again.
And I think it's awesome that Lolly is going to retry it, because now how are you going to put the lead investigator, Michael Proctor, up on the stand and have Jackson ask him the question, so you're no longer on the job, right, sir? Didn't they move you out of your position, out of the investigator unit to a completely different precinct because they completely lacked the confidence in your investigative skills, sir? They whisk you off and hide you in another precinct because they can no longer stand the sight of you? Yeah. Good luck putting him back up on the stand. With these same witnesses, do you think Lolly can do any better the second time? Of course, there's so many other parts of the interview that I'm not even discussing here, but the reporter, Christina Rex, she does ask about, well, what about the red Solo cups? And he's like, well, there was a blizzard and they did the best they could. Fucking my hairy ass, they did not. A 5-minute phone call to the Canton PD or to the fire department could have gotten you an evidence kit and some gloves and some containers to put stuff in. They didn't try because they thought it was two drunk dudes beating each other up and one got the beating and so sorry he's dead. They did not think at all this was a homicide. That's why they didn't give a shit about collecting the evidence. And he goes on to say a couple of times in the video where he's like, well, when you're rich and you can just buy your way out of things, and she doesn't take any accountability. She has money and she's just paid for this fantastic defense. I think that's their problem. But Paul seemed to enjoy her money when it was coming his way. When he needed help getting himself out of a legal situation, that's when he appreciated her money. So this whole interview, I thought it was a good idea at first. I thought we need to hear from him because obviously he's heartbroken and we want to hear from him. No, he's drank the Kool-Aid. He is bought into their side so strongly. And what can I say? Maybe bald guys all is there a bald man club that I don't know about where they're all fucking required to stick together? Because that seems to be what's happening. The Boston Baldies are all sticking together. I don't understand it.